A lot of it in
Awesome.
Ethereum as well before the whole network became unusable. Still think Ethereum, 2.0 is going to be interesting, but we're not there yet. So Binance is where it's
Yeah,
at.
yeah, I agree with that last point.
Yeah.
There
So
was
yeah, I
something I was
think we're
just
just going to get this started. I think we have enough people. So, all right. So a little bit
right.
of background and disclaimer. So I'm not involved with the Yummy team in any shape or form. I have been doing crypto investing and programming and and all that for a while, so I kind of understand tokenomics probably better than most people. And the objective here is to kind of give these 150 people to 200, whatever, information about the tokenomics of the project so that when you guys get asked questions or something like that more specific, you have the tools to answer that. I mean, these people in the chat, if I do my job right, it's not my job. I guess if I do this thing right, you guys will be the tip of the spear to at least ask or answer some of the most prominent questions of this project. So we're just going to talk about tokenomics. And like every time I have a discussion, I encourage questions. I encourage discussion. I want you guys to ask. If you disagree or you want me to elaborate, speak up, but limit your questions to real useful stuff, short, so we can really cover through a lot of material. All right, so let's go with the basics. So Yummy, we got about 1 trillion token supply, right? That's the total cap. That's all the tokens that were ever printed. They're never going to be any more. Now, of course, that doesn't describe everything that's associated with it, because the devs, what they did, which is becoming popular in the deflationary coins, is they sent a huge chunk of that circulation into the dead address. Now, the 000 or the 000 dead address is common to Ethereum, to Binance, and those addresses are unique because nobody controls them. So whatever you send to an address, they always tell you when you send crypto, make sure you send it to a place that you know where you're sending to, because you might not be able to get it back. Well, this is the black hole. Whatever gets sent here, it never goes anywhere. Nobody has the keys to open that address, and that's by design. So here's the thing. Right now, we have about 28% of the entire circulation in the dead address. And why is that important? First off, it removes coins from the equation, right? I mean, if you have less coins circulating, it just has benefits to everybody. All the coin market cap, CoinGecko, all those guys, they track the circulating market cap. So when you see market cap of 1 billion or whatever, is the price of the token times the circulating tokens. And in our case, the circulating tokens is 700 and something billion, right? So it's not that 1 trillion. And it never will be, because those tokens that were sent to hell are never going to go and come back from the dead, basically. And the reason why it's important in this coin is because that address, pretty much like any other address, and you can check this very easily, is building up Yummy coins from the reflex, right? Every time you do a sale, every time you do a tax, whatever, holders get rewarded. It's kind of like a compounding. This address gets rewarded as well. So if you actually go there and you put the Yummy balance and you just refresh every few seconds or so, you see that balance grow. So if we did nothing else, there would be this black hole of 25% of circulation kind of siphoning tokens away from the market, like removing them for good, like just erasing them from the universe. And that by itself would already be cool. And then you ask, okay, but how many tokens are actually being removed? Well, if you do the math, you notice that reflects about 0.6% of total, like per day. And since this address has about 25% of all tokens, you're removing about 0.15% every day with just the reflex from the dead address. Now, 0.15% doesn't sound like much, but if you do the math, that's actually about the equivalent to an API of 55, 60% a year, which is not great, but it's definitely not bad. I mean, it's certainly not zero. So 60% a year are going just from reflex to the dead address, okay? Nothing else. Now, if you own some Yumi tokens, you're also getting paid yourself, because the reflect goes to the dead address, but goes to you as well, right? And how much does it go? Well, if we look at the last few days, it's been falling a little bit because it depends on volume, right? It's related with the tax. So historically, it's been between 0.6% and 1%, just thereabouts. So let's assume it's really, to be conservative, let's assume it's 0.5%, right? So if you do nothing else and nothing happens in the ecosystem, you're getting 0.5% every day, which doesn't sound like much until you realize that's 180% API. So you're already at 180 plus 60, so you're at 240 API. So that's already pretty good news. If nothing happens in the project, you kind of have this innate system in the contract, cannot be changed, that is generating you 240% a year, okay? But that's not all we have. The other segment is that when you're actually generating the charity wallets and you create the 3 billion, the devs have announced that they're going to burn a substantial portion of whatever that doesn't get used for charity. So they're using 100K a day, which is pretty awesome. I mean, that helps to a lot of people. But the truth is, we're generating about 1.5 million, if not more, in the charity wallet every day. And what they're essentially going to do is they're going to burn that. Let's assume, the volume is going to be 1 million. They're going to burn about 900K worth of Yummy every day, which, the amount that will come out depends a lot on the price. But you can clearly see how that's insanely substantial. I mean, at the current market cap that we have, that's essentially 1%, right? If not 1.5%. So right now, we're getting that 0.15 plus 0.5 plus 1.3%. So we'll do the math for that to do 0.5 plus 1.3 times 5. That's an API of 711%. So 700% API just with this model, okay? That includes the burn, that includes the reflex from the dead address, which is gone for good, which is essentially the same thing as paying you, and the reflex to your own address. So right from the get-go, this is super appealing. I mean, 700% sustainable in the contraction model is insanely high. But that's not even all of it. The other segment of this is that the supply itself is contracting, so there's a compounding effect to this 700%. And unlike other compounding effects, and I'm going to take cake, because cake will be the thing that people, when they think high APIs, when they think inflation, they think cake, right? Or they think one of the swaps. But there's a key difference to these guys. Like cake, and I was there back in the day when the APIs were 500%, and so the inflation is always a problem. They're always trying to uprun. They're always trying to run faster than inflation. That's why they always talk about new features, new everything. And the dream is that they become to a point that they burn so much cake that they essentially burn all the emission and they're inflation neutral. So they're able to keep those high APIs while not increasing the circulation of the token. Well, but here we have the opposite problem. And I say problem on quotes because it's not a problem at all. Is that regardless of what we do, the supply is not increasing. So this compounding effect of removing tokens is not going to go anywhere. It's actually going to get worse and worse or better than better as you go along, simply because there's no new minted tokens. Now, of course, when you think about it, well, but how can something sustainably go just 700%, for a year, 2 years? This is impossible because, you do quick math and you're in the millions of percent after a few months. Well, something's got to give, and what's going to give is the token price. It has to. And the reason is very simple. Like right now, we're filling up the charity wallet every few hours. And actually, you can check. So there's 2 charity wallets. One of them is the one that builds up the Yumi itself, right? And that's the contract itself. And they did this pretty cool because by giving the contract and renouncing ownership, nobody can change that. Like that wallet is going to build up Yumi. It's going to dump the Yumi when it hits 3 billion until the end of the universe. That's just the way it is. And so what happens is that you're building up that Yumi. And when you hit 3 billion, and you can check the balance, I'll give you some information. If you go to the contract address, not the token address, the contract address, and you check the balance, you see the Yumi there being built up. As it gets close to 3 billion, the next couple blocks after that, it gets sold on the market, and that's how they generate the cash. So that's one charity wallet. Now, the other one is the one that actually contains the BNBs after all the sales are done. That's the one that has about $2 million of balance. That's the ones that they do the buybacks, right? So when they do a buyback, they take it from that wallet. Now, the good thing about this is all of this is pretty positive, and it's pretty good in the sense of the contract is unchanged, and the devs cannot change the fact, unless they issue the new contract, which they won't, to say we have to sell 3 billion Yumi, right? And at the current volume, because we're growing so fast, and I cannot stress this enough, man, like we're moving fast. This is one of the fastest things I've ever seen. It's no joke. I'm not saying this to moon anybody. I don't care. Moon boys, I love you guys, but I'm not about that. Just from a mathematical perspective, this is fast. So what happened is we're generating 3 billion 2 or 3 times a day. So that creates 2 or 3 large sales a day. And then the other problem the devs have is because of the Binance permissions for donating, they can only donate 100K a day. So now they find themselves in the enviable position of having 1.5 million to spend and only 100K to actually do it. And that obviously becomes a problem. What this becomes good is, okay, so the 3 billion cannot change. The wallet is going to build up. It's always going to sell. We can't do anything about it. But as the price increases, the volume of the token will continue to increase, of course, but the price to move the volume is a lot higher, which means instead of you filling the wallet every 12 hours, you'll probably fill it every day. And after a while, you'll fill it every 2 to 3 days, 4 to 5 days, 6 to 7 days. Now, that might seem bad news at the beginning because you're like, holy cow, that means that they're going to sell less tokens, they have less money for charity. No, because every time they sell, they're going to sell 3 billion Yumis, which right now they're worth like, 300K or whatever it is, but then they're going to be worth 4 million, 5 million. So each sale will give them enough gunpowder for like a month of donations, basically, right? So that means they slow down the effort, the sales decrease, the price goes up, everybody's happy, they have more than enough money to donate, and they can still do the burns that negate the whole selling pressure from the wallets. Now, why are the burns so important? And I cannot stress this enough. And this is the thing that I reach out to admins and people saying, hey, you guys are going to do this, awesome, make sure you do it, make it public, advertise, because people like me, they will look into that, okay? That's what we look for. And hey, guys, no offense, just stop the DMs. I'm getting like so many DMs here, and it's popping up all the time with, I love you guys, but don't DM me while I'm talking because I'm literally getting 5 to 6 DMs a second. So I'll answer questions afterwards. Where was I? Okay, so the thing about why the charity wallet sells actually very good news is this. When you have the sale, you get the reflect and all that stuff. And the problem, or the good thing about getting the reflect, is that you're getting that tax. So 3 billion gets sold, you get that tax. You get sold 2 to 3 times a day, then it gets taxed 2 to 3 times a day. But with the burns, those transactions have a tax of their own. So you're getting the refract from that as well, right? How much is that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Like each refract of 3 billion is about 0.1% in your wallet. Just that one transaction, 3 billion, 1% that you get back. Sure, the token dips, you look at the chart, you're all unhappy, fine, whatever, but you get 0.1% of your tokens with just that one transaction. Well, now if you're doing a buy, which is about the same amount of money, minus 100K, then you're going to get about the same amount of reflect. So essentially, for each charity wallet buyback and sale, you're getting 0.2%. So right now, you would be getting close to like 0.4% a day just with charity wallets moving around when the volume really gets crazy. And that's a good thing because that again goes into the reflect, goes into the pool that you have. Now, if all this sounds like the values are too high, I'm talking 2% a day, 3% a day, 700% a year, obviously it's not sustainable. The reason why it's this right now is because we find ourselves in a very unlikely position that almost no other project has, which is a lot of people joining up at a relatively low volume. Like, what is the ideal case scenario for growth? Let's say that I created a token and I could guarantee you that there will be 10 million holders from day one, right? From day one, I'm saying for whatever reason, I'm a huge influencer, I get 10 million people to buy one of my coin, right? So now I have 10 million people who are like aware of the project on the sidelines, kind of looking into it, right? So the only metric that matters, and I mean the only metric that matters, nothing else, is growing the number of holders with the lowest amount of volume possible. Why is this important? If the price stays flat for 2 months, but we're getting 10,000 holders every day, that's an amazing thing, meaning 10,000 people a day join the project, right? But a lot of people are not crazy like most of you degens, which just go ape shit and put as much money as you can and then complain that you should have more to buy the dips. A lot of people actually just dip their toes, they just put a little bit of money, but then, they wait on the sidelines, right? Those people who seem to be the most cautious are actually the ones more likely to FOMO when stuff really gets crazy. So what you want is you want to build up your holder network as high as you can before things really get crazy. And that's the part where we're totally excelling. If you look at the graph, you will think 100 million is not much. Yes, but you already have 23,000 guys on Twitter. You already have 60-something thousand holders. Go look at other projects that exist for 2 to 3 months, and they have 150,000 holders or something, but they exist literally for 4 times as long as we have, and they're not even nearly growing as fast as Yumi is. So there is a unique opportunity here. Like you happen to be, and I'm not showing anything, I'm not mooning anything. I honestly couldn't care less about what happens to the price in the next few days. But what I'm telling you is you find yourself in the position where the social force that's powering a lot of the tokenomics already so far ahead that the graph has simply not caught up. And already we're seeing what's kind of happening here. So for example, you know how last buy, the devs did a buyback, didn't do anything for the price? Well, this buyback, they just had this dip and they probably decided to go ahead because they saw the dip. And that was almost enough to fully recover the price. Just one buy from them. Now, the amount that they bought, I haven't looked at it in detail, but might not even have been enough. It wasn't even sufficient to make a full day of charity wallet. They just did a few because they realized that by buying 20 BNB, 30 BNB, they're already moving the price a lot. Why? Because again, the same issue. So much is being burned, so much is being removed, and something has to give, which is the price has to go up. And right now, the devs found themselves in a situation where, well, if we're going to burn, we're going to have to raise the price, but that's less than efficient because it's going to take fund from the dev wallet. And I can understand that. And I think that that's the right way to go. But sooner or later, they won't even have the option. They have to do it. If they're keeping up with the burns, they simply have to do it, right? Now, let's talk a little bit of security. So tokenomics, we've decided things are looking really good. And I mean really good. There's nothing really as dramatic as the position that Yumi finds itself in right now, in just the combination of all the tokenomics and the fact that you're essentially getting an equivalent of 700 to 800 API, and that API is guaranteed to go up. The only way it won't go up is if the token price goes up significantly, which it will. That's the only way to negate that API because it changes the amount of refracts. If the token goes up tenfold, volume will probably go up like threefold, or 3 times, right? So you're generating about 3 times more volume, but the token price is 10 times higher. So the amount that you're setting in the charity wallet of Yumis, not of dollars, of Yumis, is way, way lower. So you've slowed down the burn, you've slowed down the refracts, and the project is overall bigger. But the trade-off is your token went up 10 times, right? So 2 things have to give. I either keep the 700% API for the foreseeable future, if not longer, or my token price goes to a value that is deemed normal, which will be 100%, 200%, which means a 3 to 4 to 5x from this point minimum. I mean, that's just the way that these things work. There's just no way around it, okay? So we decided that from a tokenomics perspective, this is the way to go. Like, this is the project we have in mind. By the way, I only have Yumi, BNB, a little bit of Cake, and stable coins, nothing else. Not financial advice, but that's my portfolio. Now, let's talk about security. One of the things that people ask before is, how do we know the liquidity is locked? Well, that's actually pretty simple. All you have to do is you go to PooCoin or whatever chart you use, and over there they're going to have Yumi BNB LP holdings. And right now it's about 6,600 BNB. There's a link there on the V2, which is PancakeSwap V2, where you can click holders. You can click on that link, and you get sent for the Pancake LP that does the trade of Yumi to BNB, right? That's where all the trading happens when you submit an order. Eventually, it passes through that LP, and that's what they mean by liquidity. Now, what this means is that if the liquidity is available in the market and someone pulls it, that can destroy the market, right? So this is a problem. People will say, how do I know my liquidity is locked? I want to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Well, remember we talked about the dead address, right? The 000. If you go there and you see that most of the liquidity is on the dead address, then you're good to go. You're never going to be able to remove it because, again, nobody controls the dead address. Whatever you throw in there, it's gone. It's dead. And right now I'm looking at it. We have 340 LPs for Yumi, of which 280 or 80% are in the dead address. So 80% of the liquidity. Now, the other 20% are people who just created LP by themselves, or maybe some remnants from the contracts back and forth. Multiple reasons for this. But it doesn't matter. What matters is 80% of the LP is in the dead address, meaning not going to go anywhere. So that's taken care of. Now, one of the things I got a lot of DMs about was, hey, how do I check Yumi time lock? Now, what is time lock? You heard about time lock in other projects, I'm sure. So time lock is you queue a transaction that only gets executed after the time of the time lock. So, for example, my time lock is 12 hours, let's say. I queue the transaction. It gets executed in 12 hours. If it's 24, it's 24 hours. Now, why is that important? If I want to change something in the contract, I want to give people enough time to review that my change is actually legit, that I'm actually doing the change I said I was going to do. So a dev posts a transaction, a guy like me looks into the code and says, yep, that's exactly what you're going to do. I'm okay with letting this transaction die out. If I wasn't, I would sell everything and just get the hell out and never touch that project again. And this is not just because devs might be trying to deceive people. Not at all. They could make a mistake. They could put in an additional zero or less a zero. I mean, a lot of things could happen with a dev that it's not even their fault, or open up an exploit they're not aware. So it's important to check these transactions and to check the time lock. Now, time lock are important in projects where you need to make contract changes. Like you're on Cake, you want to change the emission per block, you want to change the rewards of some of the pools, of some of the farms. You need to change the contract, but not to scare people. You kill the transaction, go into time lock, transaction change happens, everybody's happy, the thing is enacted, life goes on. But why isn't that important here? And we don't have one. Because the devs have renounced ownership of the contract. So when they created the contract for Yumi, they sent the ownership of the contract, and this is very easy to verify. All you have to do is you go to the contract address of Yumi, which I will have it here right now because I want to also double check to make sure I'm saying this good. You go to contract, you click read contract, and there you will find a part that says owner, and you see a bunch of zeros, meaning the dead address is the owner of the contract, meaning the dead address is the only one that can make changes. But the dead address is dead. Nobody owns it. So no changes can be made. That's it. That's why they can't change the 3 billion charity wallet sale and reduce that or increase it. They can't. It's done. It's over. It's in the contract. Only by emitting a new contract, which they probably will have to ask permission of everybody and create a new thing. It will be a big thing. There will have to be a lot of permissions and all that kind of stuff, right? So they're not going to do it. This is the way it is. So now they realize, okay, 3 billion might have been a little bit overkill, or at least for the kind of growth we're having. It's not going to be overkill in 6 months or in 2 months or whatever, or even a month, but it's overkill now. So it's hurting people because we have kind of low volume. We have these big drops. They scare people. They don't know what's happening. And someone comes in, look at these charts and be like, oh my God, some whale is dumping on us all the time. What the hell is happening? It's a charity sale. They can't do shit about it. What they can do is say, well, we're selling $1.5 million, but we're only using 100K. We're going to put 1.4 million to good use, and we're going to buy this thing. And we're going to try to time it with good dips, with good stuff, and we're going to try to remove that pressure. And that's what they're doing. And how much is that? Well, it's about 1.5% of entire circulation, which is an insane number, man. I mean, I can't even put you on paper in a graph how crazy this looks like. Like you're essentially getting a process that is fully automated, can't change. There's a manual run from the devs that they committed to, and they seem to be good guys. They seem to be on point, and that's why it's so important. Of something removing supply 2% a day, or 1.5 at the most conservative, right? So we know that the LP is locked. We can check that in that address. It's not rocket science. We know the ownership of the contract is gone. They can't do shit about it. They can't change it. Yumi will exist until the end of time. Doesn't matter what they do, unless there's some sort of exploit. The coin might go to zero, but damn, there's going to be a market, and there's going to be a charity wallet buying the coins, selling the coins. That's all going to happen, right? It's in the contract. It's a done deal. Unless they create a Yumi V2 that people agree on, that's what we have. But I don't even think that's a bad contract at all. I mean, 3 billion sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's only because we're growing so quickly. I mean, we're growing older like an insane number. Like we're going as an insane number. And if you have 100,000 people sitting on the sidelines, and all of a sudden you get a bump of 2%, 3%, 4%, the formal probability is whatever it is multiplied by 100,000 people. If you have 1 million people, it's 10 times higher. If you have 100 million people, it's the way it is. So when I was on Cake at about 70 cents, I was in a pretty big group, and I thought the Cake, in hindsight, I thought it was like pretty good stuff. And I kept telling people, I'm in at 75, I'm in at 85, I'm in at $1.10. My last buy was $1.25. I rolled Cake all the way to $15, $16. That's the value at the time I thought was the right value to sell. Obviously, hindsight could have gone a little bit further than that, but that's still a 10, 15x for my original purchase price. And you could already feel the same thing, but Cake had other problems. Cake needed insane growth to be able to grow. They needed so much liquidity, so many people to join in to actually make a dent. But the problem was that it was generating that growth. And when they had the SIP bug, it caused some issues and everything. So they had a little bit of trust issues there as well. We don't have that problem. Even if we stay this steady state, no changes, all we do is building up holders, volume stays the same, wallet price stays the same, token price stays the same, we're still growing 2% a day. We're still growing 2% a day if nothing else changes, right? Now, if some things change, we'll grow a little bit faster, but not for long because it's a ridiculous amount. But the thing that's most likely to change is the token price. I mean, it's just the way it needs to happen. And now the devs are trying to do buybacks, not affecting the price much, and that's the way to go. But sooner or later, they will affect. They have no option. The same way that people that want to buy in the market, sooner or later, they're going to impact the price upwards. Like, there's no other way around this. Like, at the end of the day, that's what needs to happen. So, tokenomics are good. Security is good. The whole Insta, Twitter, which I consider important, but not as much as the first two, is also on the high side. I mean, I've never seen anybody pull up celebrities as quickly as these guys. And if you guys think that getting a celebrity a day, even the small celebrity, is easy work, then it's not. So I'm already pretty impressed with that. So these guys are hitting on all fronts. And I'm pretty sure that while I can't guarantee prices, and I won't, and I'm not going to say we're going to hit X by whatever time, I would be very, very surprised if we're not going to breeze past the 500 million mark. But if we keep going with these burns, 500 million at 10%, 20% less tokens that we have now. So that's like a pretty big difference. 1 billion will not surprise me in the least, even from the mathematics alone. I'm not going to tell you what my personal investment strategy is, what my personal entry points or exit points are, but needless to say, very conservatively, at least a 4 to 5x would be something on my radar. Very conservatively, the bare minimum, just based on stuff I've already seen. Now, because I've been talking for 30 minutes, I'm going to drink some water, I'll come back and then answer some questions. Okay? Give me 5 minutes.